Okay, let's go ahead and get rolling. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We are here today to walk you through a deck and presentation that we've got on cloud channels and really what we're calling Cloud 2.0 and how to get the most out of a channel in this new world. I'm Peter Hornberger. I'm going to be the moderator today, and I'm really going to step out and pass this over to Richard Flynn, a wonderful guest that has joined us today from the Spur Group, and then Stephen Kellam, our SVP of Sales and Marketing. I'll let you tell them as we go through. I'll let them tell you a little bit more about themselves. I'll be stepping out, but I'll come back at the end. We're going to have a time to answer some questions. So if you have questions, there's a box in the GoToWebinar UI. You can fill out your questions. We'll make sure to set aside some time to answer those. And also, I know the question always comes up on these if we're going to record these and send out slides. And yes, absolutely, we're going to do that. We will have recordings and slide links processed and available to you in a couple of days once we finish the webinar. So we'll have that coming your way. To give you a brief look at what we're going to discuss today, we're going to talk about what is Cloud 2.0. First, give you some definitions. We're going to have a whole series of different 5 keys that we have around enabling partners, building internal consensus, mitigating risk, and areas that you can incentivize your cloud channel in this new environment. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Stephen Kellam, and we're going to get into this.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate that. We have a lot of ground to cover today. So we're gonna jump right into it. Really, this is what is Cloud 2.0 today? Why should we care? And how does it really affect us? And what can we do about it? We wanted to have a little bit of fun. We had a few laughs. We did. Richard wasn't on it, but we did a cloud webinar. Peter, what was it? 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 2 years ago. And the conversations around cloud 2 years ago, it was just amazing as we looked at the slides on how simplistic they were. Literally, we were talking to people about moving from records to iPods. We were talking about Blockbuster video going to Netflix. And so believe me, this presentation is not going to be about this. However, I do think it's pretty cool, the Netflix story and how successful they've been and as an organization that tremendously captured the value of what we're going to be talking about here today. And from the IT perspective, no question about it. Things have just changed dramatically. But in reality, Cloud 2.0, what is it? Well, I'm gonna tee up a couple of comments from a bunch of folks that Richard and I talked to, and then I'm going to turn it over to Richard and let him kind of take it down the path of his definition of 2.0. I think this slide sums it up really well. Jennifer Schulte over at SAP, I thought just had a great comment. Yeah, she said it's like racing together with our partners at 180 miles an hour, with our hair on fire, and at the same time we're trying to change a tire. Look, we tried really hard to find an image of someone racing in a car and changing a tire at the same time, but it was pretty hard to do. And I think there's a reason for that. As we go through, and we'll talk about all the challenges and what that buyer's journey has done to shake things up. There's never been anything like this that has forced both the change from the vendor's perspective and from the partner's perspective at the same time. So we're moving super fast. And the race car analogy is one piece, and then as we talked to some other folks, we kept hearing it's moving even faster than that. Think about the speed of light, and think about accelerating from that. Some of the comments we got from say Sal Patalona at Lenovo was, we vendors are not moving fast enough. The buyer's journey alone can take maybe 1 in 3 out. I mean, that's just amazing speed, right? And this one, Sal was talking about the short list, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the buyer's journey. But I think the short list, the buyer's short list, and what digital marketing is going to do for the partners and how good they're going to have to be at digital marketing is going to be one of the biggest game changers ever. And it's even accelerating faster than many people have thought. Speaking to Mike Gallagher over at HP, he was talking about it's just some unbelievable conversations that are going on, and all the speed and this movement that's taking place. We still have partners who aren't showing a sense of urgency, and so if you're going to move at warp speed, you got to watch out for black holes. By the way, that's an image of a black hole. and there's going to be some breakage. There's going to be some damage. As Sal was saying, as Mike was saying, as Jennifer was saying, they're going to be partners who are not going to make it. It's pretty amazing that you can have $1 million partner, $1 billion partner, sitting right in front of you having a conversation with no sense of urgency and thinking they're too big to fail. And that was another one of Mike's comments. He said it reminded him of the banking crisis. And the reality they're trying to get across internally and to their partners as well is there really is no too big to fail today. Okay. So why the hurry? And I think this all comes back to, the buyers have changed this. There's no question that the buyer's journey, and Richard's going to go into zero moment of truth and some details around that in a few minutes, but the buyer's journey has changed so much. I'm sure all of you have heard the statistics on how far along a buyer's journey is before they contact a salesperson. And whether it's 50% or 60%, it's substantial. And when you get to the digital marketing side of things and how that affects the cloud and the cloud resellers, I think it's going to be even a lot more. So many things are changing, both for the vendor and the partner. The business outcomes are shifting from sales to marketing led. Today's partners have to have skills they never had before. I think this is a really interesting list. I used to be a partner. I understood when you sell into SMB in particular and you're doing relationship recurring revenue selling, look, you have to understand finance. You need to be able to talk to CEOs. You need to be able to talk to CFOs. You need to understand digital marketing. You need to understand how to get your brand out there. You need to understand recurring revenue for sure. You need to be able to understand what that cash crunch looks like. You need to understand how to build upon that, how to forecast where your business is going to go, and how do you maintain success. The one I had never heard was the fact that partners and partner salespeople should be able to have either run a business or been a major part of a business and watched it fail. So when you look at this, that's a huge difference in what the traditional partner would have from a sales group. And then when you get to the vendors, oh, wow, I mean, one of the biggest challenges vendors have is, how do I get marketing to the masses? Sal talks a lot about how can you make low touch, high volume. So how do you create marketing for partners that doesn't bury you and allows them to get where they need to go? And then everyone's systems needs to be integrated. I think one of the things we'll touch upon as we go through further down the road too is, there's going to be a lot of tie-in of CRMs to PRMs. There needs to be a lot of sharing of data, and obviously there's a lot of angst that goes with that. And then I thought one of the more interesting comments I heard from partners and vendors, and I've heard on a regular basis, is the relationship between the partner and their buyer has changed so much. It used to be all about the product. Now it's about the success is about the relationship itself, and that's just a big change. So all of those things added up together, it's a big hurry. So what are some of the things that we can do that need to take place to make this successful? Megan Sullivan over at SAP had some pretty interesting comments on this as well. She really talked about how it's all about trust now, and that relationship needs to be really strong. She talked about how, once again, we're changing the partners and the vendors at the same time. And it's a symbiotic relationship where both of them have to be able to do well to succeed. You can't have one do well without the other one do well. It's unsustainable otherwise. And that sort of leads into a conversation that I've had with so many individuals around, okay, so what is that circle of trust? How does that get built? And what does it really mean? Over and over again, I kept hearing about transparency and the need for both the partner and the vendor, once again, to establish that trust. And the key is the key for long-term success. Aligning the KPIs, making sure that the partners and the vendors have the same goals and same objectives. Empowering the sales organizations and empowering these partners to be successful. Really giving them what they need so that they can execute, and perhaps that may be sharing of data. And in the past, that wasn't really well done. I've got a great story here. There's a partner that I know pretty well, is a Kaseya partner down in Miami, and his name is Jason, and he's a 100% cloud partner. And with his cloud offering, it's all about trials. Almost every one of his prospects goes through a 30-day trial. And historically, his sales guy would follow up on a week or follow up on 2 weeks and follow up and see how it was going. But he was kind of in the dark, and he was just doing his best to follow up on those trials and see how well things were going. He's been working with Kaseya, and together they've come up with a game plan. They now look at every trial on a daily basis. And Jason is sharing his trials with Kaseya, and he's able to talk about, okay, here's information on this buyer and what modules they're using. And then Kaseya is aggregating this data, and together they're coming together and creating a ability to forecast success. Jason now can run a trial, and he can see on a daily basis the probability of success going up or going down based on what modules the buyer is engaged in. And they work together, right? So Jason's sales guys are seeing that there's somebody buying something, and they're using all the modules, they're engaging all their people, and it's going to be successful. He's not going to go back and discount price. He's going to be able to keep his margins. If he sees it's falling off, instead of waiting 30 days or even 2 weeks or even a week, he knows that, look, I need to get back there and engage, and it's probably not about price at this point. I missed something somewhere, and I need to be able to go back and re-engage and find out what I missed. And for something like that to be successful, the vendor and the partner have to work together like they've never worked together before. It truly is a symbiotic relationship, and they really do have to share a lot of data. So the other piece on this I wanted to touch on before I turn over to Richard really is this circle extends to the buyers. It's a totally new type of relationship. If a partner or reseller is calling up their buyer to get a renewal, and that's the first time they've talked to that buyer is about that renewal, in today's world, the likelihood of getting that renewal are going to be greatly diminished because other individuals, other sellers are going to be touching and reaching out to that partner as they go through that process. And it really is a completely different customer relationship. Which leads me to this quote. It was one of my favorite quotes. It came from Jason. And what he said it's like a marriage, and it really is, right? And he was saying, if my wife stops talking to me and stops telling me what she thinks, I'm in big trouble. Now, he used a little bit more colorful language in the first conversation that we had on this, but in reality, what he's saying is, hey, if for your partners, to get them to understand that if their buyers stop talking to them, and we're talking about a long-term engagement where retention is key, you're going to be in big trouble. So that's the lead-in to Richard's discussion around Cloud 2.0. We've had a lot of fun talking to a lot of people over the past couple months as we've really started to dig into this. But at this point, I'll let Richard take it a little bit, and he can start talking about, what does Cloud 2.0 really mean? Richard?
Yeah, thanks. So let me just set some context for just a minute. So, what we would consider to be Cloud 1.0, is really where all of us were, not that long ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where the cloud was really beginning to have its footprint, and most vendors in the industry were trying to figure out what was their strategy. Partners were trying to figure out how do they make the shifts. Customers were trying to figure out whether or not the cloud was really the space that they wanted to buy into. And what we're seeing that stage, Cloud 1.0, for many cases is done, and now we're in the second wave of disruption that the cloud is really coming into. And so what we see from a customer's point of view is that they've already made the change, that functional buyers are now buying, and sometimes big, robust systems. CMOs are seeing that they have sometimes as much as half of the IT budget for a company, and they're making those purchases independent of the IT department. They're buying different types of value in terms of what it is that they're looking for from the systems, and as we'll talk about in just a few minutes, they're really buying in a different manner than people used to buy. We see that partners are a little bit lagging behind where those customers are, but many partners have already made the jump into the cloud space. So it's no longer about should you be a cloud partner, it's about how do I survive as a cloud partner. And it's changing their economic models. It really is changing the way that they sell. As Steve mentioned, it's moving from a sales model to more of a marketing model. And it's changing the staffing that they have in terms of who is successful, to help them drive their business forward. And the big laggards in all of this are actually the vendors. And that the vendors, because at this stage of the game, a majority of the revenue is still, being seen under the traditional business model, they aren't yet setting up with what are the right metrics for success for partners. They're not really splitting their programs, in a manner that really helps, nurture these, cloud partners. And they have a real need to really refigure how they're doing their marketing support, as they drive forward. It's very interesting if we go to the next slide. That Google is a great video. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you can hopefully after this seminar, this webinar, go take a look at it. But they talk about the 0 moment of truth and how the digital journey has really changed for customers. And what's really dramatic about this is that it really is changing everything in the way that people are buying. Think about it yourself. Almost everybody nowadays, looks at Amazon to figure out, whether or not they should buy, from there, even if they're going to go to a retail store. It just changes the way that we do things. And in fact, if you go to the next slide, what we're seeing for traditional purchases, that in many cases, up to 57% of all customers have pretty much made their buying decision by the time they talk to, where they're going to buy this from. And so, they've done the social media thing. They've gone online and they've looked at reviews. They've, in many cases, even sometimes trialed or looked at the things that they were already looking to do. And so by the time the customer talks to the partner, they're pretty far down that journey. And what we see, if you go to the next slide, in the technology, in the cloud area, that's even further forward than it is for traditional purchases. And so in many cases, 80% of the customers are already, well down that journey. And so this is really being very, very disruptive, to the way that people think about things. And if you go to the next slide, what ends up happening is this whole concept of where do customers get information is really fundamentally changing. Now, when you think about it, and in one way the term is really overused, but where is it that partners in the past made their money? It was by being the trusted advisor for their customers. And what's ending up happening with this new way of customers securing information is that status as the sole trusted advisor is really being eroded. And so what that really means for a partner is that they have to figure out how they can retain their trusted advisor status by really changing the way that they work in the marketplace. And that's a lot of what Steve's about to talk about, in really the ways that vendors can enable, partners to be successful.